Hello, folks. Welcome to DRUID Talks. And today I've Dave Hodsdon, the VP of Operations at Liberty Global. And Liberty Global is a world leader in converged broadband, video, and mobile communications. Dave, you and I know each other for quite some time now, but set the scene here. Tell us a few words about yourself, sir.
Yeah, Kieran, thanks so much for the introduction. And look, absolute pleasure to be here. I'm thrilled that we finally found the time to do the podcast, right? So yeah, really pleased to be here. A little bit of context, and you've teed it up nicely. So I look after the operations in a shared service center that serves companies in the Liberty Global Group. And what that means is we're serving kind of 12, 15 operating businesses, household names that you'd know. The Virgin Media O2s in the UK, if you're familiar with the Swiss business, Sunrise over there. And these are real kind of, household brands. And the shared service role is the engine room. It is the common back office. So when we talk about operations, we mean finance, transactional finance, accounting, we mean legal, we need litigation, contract management. We're talking about HR, so people, payroll, and also construction support. So that relationship that you have with planning and construction teams. Just to kind of give you a few words on how the relationship with DRUID is developed in this support center. We've been working with the DRUID team now for the last 2-3 years, really looking at use cases for conversational AI and how we try and make those interactions with our customers a lot more fluid, a lot more regular, and we try to meet our customer where they're already at. So, this is kind of replacing traditional telephony and kind of two-way messaging for us.
Well, it might have been easier there, Dave, if we said what you and Liberty Global don't do, because that's a heck of a list. And what you're not telling people as well, a lawyer who understands tech as well. So this is a bit of a unicorn, folks. We got what is today. So we're going to learn a lot. So Dave, I'm going to dive straight into the first question. Just a little bit more context. What were the problems that you were trying to solve as you looked for a conversational AI platform like DRUID's?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. Fundamentally, the understanding communication, both into and out from our support center, the kind of the back office that we described in the previous segment. And there are lots of reasons why people need to communicate with the back office. It's an extension of the customer, and that's how we see ourselves, and that's how we need to show up in order to deliver for that customer. And the way that we have done that traditionally has been less effective, and so that really created this kind of need for something new. Traditionally, I'm sure it won't surprise many of your listeners to know that the traditional back office, you engage with them either by telephone, and unfortunately you dial a number and you wait in line, and it's a case of how many hands can you have kind of manning the phones, or you are communicating over traditional email, and then it's a ticketing system in the background. And I kind of refer to this as the deli counter where you go to buy your meat and cheese, and you take your ticket and you wait until your number's called. And that was very much the experience that we were providing to our customers a couple of years ago. And that just doesn't meet with the expectations, I think, that we have as consumers of information. If you're interacting with an online marketplace, if you're interacting with your financial institution, your banks, you're able to access those mediums 24 hours a day. They're there when you need them. And if we're going to be a really effective partner for our customers, we've got to offer that. We've got to be there when they need us. No wait times, immediate responses, friendly, professional interface. And that's the real use case for conversational AI for us.
Yeah, I think that's the day and age we're in now, isn't it? That customers actually expect digital service when they want it, as they need it. You alluded a moment ago, Dave, that you had that semi-deli counter experience beforehand. But what were you doing to solve challenges before conversational AI, and where was it leading to those frustrations that you started to look for that technology to solve the problems that you're just describing?
Sure. Sure. So the challenge that we had, and I think this is across, to be clear, transactional finance, across HR, payroll, where you have the relationship with your customers that they need information from you. Some of that information is accessible through self-service, but perhaps the kind of route to access that information might be cumbersome. It might be that you don't interact with that particular query type often, and so you're looking for just somebody who can offer you expert support, guidance in the moment, guidance. And that kind of traditional medium of that ticketing system, that kind of deli counter example that we talked about, you're left holding an awful lot of data as to why, qualitative data as to why people are interacting with you, but you end up solving the query that's presented to you rather than the underlying issue. And so what I'm really getting at there is, you can allocate a lot of human resource, intelligent human resource, to dealing with a surfacing of information for your customer. Let me give you a very articulate example there. If you're looking at transactional finance, it's quite common for a customer to come in and say, hey, I'd like some information on the status of an invoice. I'd like to know when it will be paid. I'd like to know, I'd like to update some information on the supplier that I'm working with. How do I do that? And so it's kind of regular, repetitive. Well, here's how you do it. You end up putting a lot of resource on just solving that index problem. And it's quite easy to think at the end, well, I've done a great job because I answered 50 queries today or 100 queries today. But actually what you haven't done is provided that next level of customer support where you're really getting to well, why did that happen? Why did you need to come to me to ask me to surface that information for you? And actually the underlying cause there might be, the supplier I'm working with hasn't been paid on time, or I'd sent a request for some information and I've not seen it updated, or and actually using our human resource to solve the underlying issue is where I'd like to spend the time. And that's the thing that really wasn't being addressed before the conversational AI integrations.
So what did you do, or what convinced you to pick DRUID's conversational AI platform over another platform? What were the features or the benefits or the functionality that you really needed?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And ultimately, we were looking for a partner. The word partnership is so important to me when it comes to selecting technology vendors to work with. Our business is going through a journey, a transition. We're digitizing the services that we used to offer in an analog way. We're looking at the value creation of having humans undertake administrative tasks, moving our humans to knowledge-based tasks. We're trying to get closer to our customers. We're trying to move up the value chain from simple transactional processing to intelligent processing. So producing monthly accounts, completing journals, undertaking balance sheet reconciliations, undertaking litigation. And the way that we do that and still preserve value for the customer is to enter into a very strong partnership with a vendor that really understands how their technology works in a real corporate setting. And so one of the catalysts for us was great partnership with DRUID, and that is the people, that is the passion and the excitement. You've really got to enjoy the work you do and be passionate about the products that you have, and more importantly than that, be passionate about solving problems. And we really recognize that right from the outset with DRUID, that they were here to try and solve some of our corporate problems. And in the process, we'd form a very close relationship, and it'd be a commercial relationship that would work for both sides. In terms of the kind of features, multi-language is really important. When you can teed up this conversation, we're serving customers in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Switzerland, and there are 8-9 languages spoken in those territories. And whilst as a group of companies, the common language there is English, it makes sense to meet our customers where they are. And so where you have people raising HR queries, for example, and they want to know about leave balances and they want to know about family leave policies, those questions are coming in Swiss German, they're coming in French, they're coming in Dutch. And so DRUID's ability to be able to integrate complex language modules and really solve that language barrier, the ability to be able to offer things like, and I think it's a really neat feature, a two-way messaging service where I can put UK-based agents using the workbench of the DRUID tool, waiting to receive queries that come in Swiss German that are automatically converted. So my UK user can converse in English, and my customer's employee can converse in a natural language to them. And that's a really slick feature. Really like that. And I also think, I know we'll get onto it later, but we're talking about kind of rapid advancement of technology at the moment. You and I, Kieran, talk about this a lot. The market's moving quickly. And I think it's important that the partners that we work with recognize that and are agile, flexible enough to see the changes that are happening to the market and look at how they respond to them. The deployment of new features, the iteration of their kind of product roadmap has constantly kept us feeling like we're at the front of the queue and the top of our game when it comes to conversational AI.
I really adore that. Dave, you and I have talked about this in the past, but I see too many vendors actually reacting to the market as opposed to actually anticipating what's coming and spending time with companies. And I have to say, I enjoy the multilingual part. Although a funny story, I was in Barcelona once, or Milan, and I was using Google Translate, and somehow I told the taxi driver I loved him. I did technically, but not emotionally. So I'm glad to hear that is now all working many decades later. And I love as well the way you mentioned you focused on the customers and you focused on your employees. There was no hint there whatsoever of taking people out of the business. It's very much about augmenting them and allowing them to do great things. But Dave, the results of the pudding is in the tasting. What sort of results have you got from implementing the platform so far?
It's a great question, and when I do listen to the show, Kieran, when I listen to season one, some of the talks that really stood out for me were those where the audience could get some real kind of actionable insights. And so I thought it was really important to bring some statistics, and stop me if you've heard too much. But the deployments that we've set out so far have been achieving about 65% query resolution ratio. And so what that means is 6.5 out of 10 queries that are coming through are being answered automatically by the virtual assistant without the need for a human user intervention. And why that's really exciting for me is we do a lot of analysis, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners do as well, on the reasons that people interact with us. And absolutely, somewhere between 50 and 70% of the queries that come into our teams today, the answers are pretty straightforward. And I don't want our committed, experienced, and loyal workforce picking up the same query 10, 15, 20 times in a day. It's administrative. It's frankly quite soul destroying, being sat there kind of repeat, rinse and repeat. A valuable public service, but the automations can take care of this. So let's let them lift the weight of that 65%, and let's us focus on driving the resolution of the underlying cause of those queries, which is where we've been able to deploy our resource. So our people now upskill, they understand what's driving, the queries that come into the teams, and instead they focus on partnering with our customers to resolve those queries at source. Now, in terms of the development of the tool, I'm really excited because I can see a glide path taking us from 65% to 85%. Some new features with the DRUID product that I know the team have been working on that I really like. And this is about, let me give you just one specific example here about something that's getting me really excited, if that's okay. The conversational AI itself, we're not just talking about, the ability to be able to engage with a virtual assistant that can surface fixed information. we're also talking about the ability to be able to configure the virtual assistant to go and take a next action based on something that the users, inquired about. And so, I like the example back to accounts payable. I like the example of, hey, what, tell me the status of this invoice. Okay, it's currently unpaid. Well, why is it unpaid? Well, because the purchase order to which the invoice relates hasn't been receipted. So your business user hasn't said, I've received the goods or services that I was expecting to pay for. And so effectively, the invoice has come out of sequence for a traditional kind of three-way match. And so, that's useful information. And today, our AP clerk, if you like, can receive that information and say, no problem, I will take the action to follow that up with the purchase order owner. And I will say, hey, have you received these goods and services? Because I've got an invoice here. But actually, the DRUID product is now developing and it's taking us on a journey where we can say, the virtual assistant goes, hey, it's on hold. Would you like me to go and speak to the purchase order requester to see if they have received the goods and services? Yes, please. And so then the push notification there, on the same medium that we use to surface the virtual assistant, which for us is Microsoft Teams, a push notification to say, hey, if you've received the goods or services, would you like to receive them? There's an invoice waiting. Well, yeah, I would, please. Okay, I can do that for you. And it becomes, it's a bit of a evolution. Where does it stop? But this is how I like to see, this is why I described the relationship as a partnership earlier, Kieran. This is about the DRUID team really understanding our use case and how we're embedding this technology and saying, rather than it just being a two-way, you tell me what you want and I'll give you an answer, let me do next best action. And through doing that, you can actually get really creative with your use cases.
Oh, wow. I love that in so many different layers there. Particularly the one, none of us come to work to do mundane, boring stuff, and it's amazing how many people today still have to do that. And then we wonder why they disappear, aren't engaged, don't give the wonderful customer service that we've got. Well, Dave, what lessons have you learned that you're happy to share with the audience here as you've installed and implemented and built and used and obviously got massive success from conversational AI?
Yeah, I've learned many lessons and I'm very happy to share them. I think the first and probably the most pronounced lesson is don't wait to deploy until it's perfect. And I know you hear this a lot. You're like me, Kieran. We read a ton of literature on evolving tech and emerging tech and startups, and it is a common lesson. So I realize this isn't new news, but the importance of versioning, the importance of getting a product out there in front of your customer that is pretty good. The bits that I would get right before I was ready to launch, the user interface, the user experience, so that when my customer connects, what they're seeing and what they're interacting with looks professional, meets the expectation, if you like, of this virtual assistant. But actually, configuring too many pathways for automating queries and responses. I've learned just to get version 1 out there, and then update every whatever it is, every 6 weeks, perhaps for the first 6 months, and then move to quarterly releases, and the product gets better and better. And what that builds is a real relationship between the customer using the product. Let's talk about the operational teams as well that are also users of this product at the other side of the interface, and they are much more engaged then in iterating the product. This is what it needs to look like. This is the next feature that's important because so that's been super relevant and a great lesson. Focus on the platform that you're using to surface the virtual assistant. And so for us, when we started, we deployed our virtual assistant in the same place that we had our ticketing tool and access to our telephone numbers. And so for us, this was a business SharePoint. It made sense. All of the frequently asked questions are there. All of the, you usually sign up for a ticket. You're used to using this to kind of, access your tickets. That's fine. But actually, that was still too many clicks away from the user. And actually bringing that, virtual assistant really close to the end user was very, very important. And so with the businesses that we serve, they prefer Microsoft Teams as a common medium for engaging with one another. So they talk to their colleagues over Teams. Teams calls, Teams messages popping up all the time. And so we surface the virtual assistant there. We locked it in as an employee. We gave it a snazzy name. It's important as well for engagement. But actually, it's reduced the friction between I've got a query, how do I access the right forum for that query? Now it's just like just connect the virtual assistant. So that was super relevant, and great lesson for us. I think the third and equally as important is that level of engagement. And I talk a lot, and Danny, who leads our transformation function and works with me, talks a lot about this power of engagement, engaging both our teams that will use the product, our operational teams, and our customers that will interact with the product. Super important. I'm told that 7 out of 10 transformation large-scale change programs fail because they haven't secured sufficient engagement at all levels. And tended to be in the early days, we were talking to the decision makers. It feels natural, right? So the CFO, the CPO, and their leadership teams about the value of deploying virtual assistants. We've got the buy-in at that top level. But actually, the users of the platform, super relevant to bring them along on that journey, both from a user feedback perspective, and that goes back to that versioning that we were talking about a moment ago, but also the success of that project. So think about the operational teams that sit behind our conversational AI and pick up what I'd probably class as tier 2 or more complex or more bespoke queries. If the workbench that they're using to do that work isn't efficient, isn't effective, doesn't look the way that they'd expect it to in order for them to be able to navigate through, they'll find workarounds. And they don't always tell you because you're busy 100 miles an hour deploying product. They don't always say to you, hey, I'm not using the platform as you thought I'd use it. I found another way of using it. And so, we can drive kind of waste into the process that we hadn't anticipated by just not having that open channel of communication. So I think that engagement layer is critically important.
Yeah, people forget the change management, but I would say in my own head, Dave, I'm picking a word out there out of all of that, and it's friction. And you remove the friction from the user, you remove the friction from the gap between the actual team and the user and the outcomes. You've removed friction from the leadership and the comms and the change management. Really brilliant lessons for everyone.